When the economic environment becomes uncertain, we provide the truth from a breadth of perspectives to help people make decisions. We not only compile and analyze the data that moves our ever-evolving economy, we carefully craft our own to provide clarity across industries, businesses, and employment markets. We identify unique opportunities to deliver asymmetric returns and focus on capturing value created during periods of higher volatility, transforming the financial landscape together. We're MacroEdge.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to MacroEdge Radio number 49. This is John Galt speaking, broadcasting to you live from potentially, and I do say potentially, the semi-stable X platform. We've seen X have problems for the last 48 hours that are off the charts. So if this show suddenly goes into the tank, it is not our guest. It is not our esteemed host at MacroEdge. It's not yours truly. It is Elon Musk taking revenge on everyone because we didn't Doge America. Just kidding. Lighten up, everyone. Today we're going to talk to the jobs chick, Amanda Goodall. And I'll leave it short and sweet with the market coverage real quick and a few tidbits since we took a week off. It's a very unusual circumstance. Markets down, Dow down 256 today to 41,603. NASDAQ down 188 to 18,737. S&P held the 5,800 line for whatever reason, down 39.20 to 58.02. Russell 2000 down 2 points to 2043. Volume was meh. Breadth was terrible. Gold up $65 to 33.60. Silver up 40 cents to 33.62. Oil up to 61.67. Brent to 64.91. Bitcoin rallied to a new all-time high and then fell back down another 2,264 today to 108,962. 2s, 10s, 52 basis points, 10s, 3s, 16 basis points. Can't read my own handwriting. 10-year finishing the week at 4.509%, 2-year at 3.993%, and the 30-year, which is suddenly interesting again, at 5.03%, not getting below the 5% level. Gee, I wonder why after that wonderful 20-year auction yesterday. A few quick notes before we jump on with our guest. First, Oklo. This is our friends Nobody Special, and if you don't listen to them, you should. It's a do-nothing company with nothing accomplished yet, but promises of micro-nuclear reactors that will save the world. It's up 28% because Trump signed an executive order saying that we're going to sit there and have nuclear everything. Can't wait to see where we find the engineers and college graduates to make that happen. Meanwhile, China is about to build more reactors in the next 2 years than all of the European Union combined. But what could go wrong? I mean, look at what we've done the last 40 years. We've put nothing into it. We just decided to sue anything with the word radiation in it out of existence. Last but not least, this is my John Galt rant. Amanda, I hope you don't mind, but I have to get this off my chest. Sal Mercurgliano is somebody I've been following for a long time because I was in the transportation side of the containerized business briefly in my career. And I will just read the 5 big events that happened this week, one of which is really not important to the United States, but an example of what happens when things go Atlas shrugged on a global scale. North Korean destroyer launch goes bad. They've actually covered the entire ship with tarps to conceal the damage. Apparently it was pretty bad. And I guess a lot of people are about to find out what an execution is, North Korean style. River pilot distracted by cell phone. That ended well. We've had a Maersk container ship adrift in the Atlantic for 3 weeks. A river pilot grounds a vessel due to a bathroom break. And if you didn't see the video, you can Google this. Norwegian man sleeps while a feeder ship, it's a container ship that has smaller, but has containers on it feeding it to the main ports, was almost hit by a container ship in his bedroom as apparently somebody didn't want to spill their beer and put the ship aground. Without further ado, I wish to welcome Amanda Goodall, the jobs chick, or at the jobs chick. Amanda, welcome to MacroEdge Radio.
Hey, happy Friday, everyone. It's been a long week, right? There's been so much going on. I didn't even know about all that stuff with transportation and logistics. So learning a lot already. But
Well, it's been a little bit insane, but please fill everybody in about your background and what you do and what you're promoting on your website, because we always encourage our guests to talk their book and talk about what they do, because you actually do provide some nice services trying to coach people and teach people, hey, here's the new reality. So feed that information to our listeners if they're not familiar with you.
yeah. I'm the job chick. Been the job chick for the last 20 years. And, I've worked with a lot of executives over the years, a lot of companies, their HR teams, and really kind of moved into the workforce intelligence. Because what I was realizing is everybody's not looking at the talent. They're looking at the stock market. They're looking at other things. And I'm not a stock market girl. I couldn't even tell you about all that kind of stuff. I listen to you guys for that. But what people aren't looking at is what's going on with talent. And that will tell you everything that makes things shift. And it's usually like several quarters out that you really have to look at. But everything that you look at, from the SEC filings to hidden phrases that CEOs use and whatnot, those are all the things that you really should be listening to. And so between that, I also advise several companies in a lot of different fields. Namely, I kind of really deal with the consumer credit side. Been working with the company for the last 6 years on that, just advising them. So jumping into the consumer debt issue, and it all ties into jobs and the layoffs, and when you layer it all up, it's wild to look at. And what I love is I have such a broad background. I've done a lot. I've done a lot of industries, worked in a lot of industries. I know I've heard conversations that I should not have been privy to, but they tell me, just working with all the different companies that I have with, but when you tie all of those little fragments together, my mind just gets blown on a daily basis, because I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is happening. And then I see somebody, go more into depth into an area that I don't know. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, so that's what I do. It's workforce intelligence. It's knowing all the little things that go on behind the scene that are going to cause the problems that everybody else can look at from a macro level, et cetera.
Well, let's tie into what I was just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen a problem with our education system.
Yeah.
I think you'll be the first to acknowledge that. It's like, hey, no duh, dum dum. You figured that out on your own, and I agree with you. I figured it out on my own, especially watching and helping people hire, et cetera, in the last couple decades myself. And what I've noticed is that we have a problem where we've decided that engineering is more important to outsource than insource. And I think we're starting to pay the price for that as the talent level domestically has declined, i.e., nuclear, and anything having to do with the word radiation. Good God forbid that. And meanwhile, the majority of the rest of the world sat there and said, are you people nuts? We'll major in that. And it sort of parallels to what's happening in software, et cetera. Is this problem finally going to come to a head as the older generation, us old guys, yeah, I'm one of them, start to withdraw from the workforce, and the experience isn't there to fix the problems that were left behind the last 20, 30 years?
100%. Seeing it in real time, and, looking at other industries, namely tech, and some finance over the last like 2-3 years, I'm already, I've seen a lot of, those that have retired or, just left at a younger age, maybe they're not the 60 plus, but they've left at a younger age, and they've come back and went, okay, I need to jump back in because these people don't know what they're doing. And these people being, the younger generation, and, not to dogpile on them, but everything's different now. Education is different now, how they get into their jobs, what's going on, so it's not necessarily that I'm blaming, Gen Z or millennials or whatever, but we are seeing that. So is it going to hit engineering? Oh yeah, 100%. And I really feel like it's already starting. We're starting to see little things, nothing big yet. I haven't seen anything big yet, but it's coming. I would say give it another year or so, and we're going to have problems. Ironically, my son-in-law is a nuclear engineer. And, and he's working, with some like defense contracts and stuff like that. So, I do see that side. So there are some really bright minds out there, but all in all, it's it's going to get dicey. And we've seen that from everything, like I said, from tech to finance, aviation, you name it. Engineering's just next, right?
So looking at this, could this explain part of the problems? And this is an arbitrary opinion on the lack of qualified individuals in aerospace and other quote unquote engineering industries, where we're starting to see problems not just with quality control, but overdependence on computers to create solutions for things that in the past, and I do mean in the past, we did with pencil and paper and basic calculators. It wasn't that hard, but it does become obvious someone's not double checking the output and the work that's being put into this software. And I think that's why we're starting to see more accidents and problems with our mechanical output.
I agree. Okay, think about it. We have our phones. Tell me your best friend's number. We don't know that now, but we used to know that, right? It's with certain industries, aviation being one of them, that is the stuff where you get in there, you figure out how it works, what's going on, and there are a lot of people that are just relying on the tech and the computer side of it, and now we've got AI working into it. So we do have that issue. My father was actually a simulator tech with American and CAE, and for his whole career, and he was one of the last guys that were working at CAE out of Dallas that actually knew how to read schematics and actually get in there and fix it. When the systems were down, they called him in and they were like, "Hey, Fred, we need your help. The guys don't know how to do it." And he's like, "What do you mean they don't know how to do it? It's their job." There's people that don't understand both sides, and I do think we need to get back to that nitty gritty of, like you said, figuring out that mechanical side, figuring out how to use a calculator, and doing the job.
So this dependency on computers to solve everything and this sudden reliance on AI, or artificial intelligence, for those of you in Burbank, California, it's an old joke. You wouldn't get it unless you watched the Tonight Show. Do you think that the lack of understanding how specific scientific processes function in a mathematical sense is putting America further behind, because we cannot sit there and depend on AI as a solution when we're starting to see AI putting out bad output, including some very basic math problems which have been run through. And it terrifies the hell out of me. We're going to have more accidents, more ships running aground, et cetera, without the human oversight until the technology is perfected.
Yeah, it definitely. AI is fantastic. We all love it, right? But I do think it's going to be a little bit of an issue. We're going to have these ups and downs as we're learning it, as it's getting better. And, the mathematics you're bringing up is exactly the prime point, and you can put anything into chat, for instance, or Claude or whatever, and it can spit out something and you're like, yeah, no, that's not correct. And that's, not even looking at mathematics. There's so much that we don't know what to do with AI, and I'll bring in the HR side because, again, not to dogpile on HR tech, but it's the problem I'm seeing. And it's that same concept of, well, we don't know how to do the job unless, well, the AI says we need to put this candidate through. Well, why? I don't know, because AI told us to. And we're seeing that. So it is a matter of time before it widespreads and it hits even more industries in a way that is going to start to affect more and more people, more and more jobs, and the disasters. I do think we will see that, and and I don't think we can necessarily, expect how much, but there are going to be the anomalies that happen that make us just go, oh my gosh, what is AI doing to us?
Well, let's go. You brought the HR side up, so I'm going to ask you. This is more of your field of expertise, because I'm out there in La La Land covering everything macro and transportation and stupidity that I can find. So I've got to focus on something you really know about and have been educating me about. So is the introduction of AI for the evaluation of talent prevalent in the industry now?
Yes, and it's a total disaster. If anybody's seen my post anywhere online, I don't really hold back. I'm not one to sugarcoat things. When something's wrong, it's wrong. And it really, really, if you look back at HR and what they've done with recruiting, when ATS really started, it was whatever, some people used it, they didn't. And then there was a couple, and now there's so much. And now there's like just tech stack upon tech stack. And I got to hand it to all these sales guys and SaaS for these HR tech companies. They're really good at selling it because these companies just keep buying it. But the very fact that we are at the point we're at with hiring and recruiting, it directly ties to the issues that we have, because anybody can become a recruiter these days. My 16-year-old daughter could become a recruiter. It doesn't necessarily mean she knows what they need to have as a candidate or whatnot. But we see a lot of companies that are just like throwing money at it. The amount of money spent in HR and recruiting and the cost for that is astronomical. I mean, honestly, it is astronomical. I was actually talking to Danielle DiMartino Booth about something I posted the other day, and it was, I can't even remember the number. I think it was like 95 billion. JP Morgan, I can't remember which one. I think it might have been their CFO. He was saying, we're going to be spending less than our annual 95 billion spend on hiring this year, because they are pulling back like so many companies. And, when you look at that and just go, wow, 95 billion, and you look at their non-interest expenses, even I think last year it was like 81, so it's expensive. And when you're looking at all these workforce costs, not just salary, but everything else, yeah, for JP Morgan, it's somewhere in the range of probably 55 plus. Companies have problems with HR, and job seekers are feeling it. I can't even imagine what it is like to be a job seeker. I'm lucky enough to have never had a job, minus 3 months working at Schlotsky's for a family friend when I was like 15. But other than that, I don't know how people do it. And I coach them through it, and I help them on their career path. But still, I don't know how they're doing it. And companies are going to find themselves in a disaster. I'm already seeing HR at the HR conferences, their heads are spinning. They're still focused on skills. And last year it was all about AI. We're going to bring in AI and it's going to make it so much easier for our recruiters. And this year they're like, yeah, so we have problems with skills and we're not really sure what's happening. And we still have high attrition rates. And I'm just like, yeah, look at your tech stacks. You have an issue.
So with that in mind, is this a new talent problem where the HR people don't have the ability, because of how they've been raised in this new high-tech AI world, which, let's face it, for the last 5 years, that's their experience since the pandemic. I'm not going to sit there and condemn any kid who graduated during the pandemic. They weren't given a fair shake. But someone who graduated college, became an HR director, learned, grew up to the title of director of HR, et cetera, they can't properly evaluate talent due to a lack of experience in the very corporations or field they're asked to judge. And isn't that not part of the reason we're seeing a deterioration, be it in finance, engineering firms, manufacturing, et cetera? We're starting to see the consequences of poor HR management.
Yes, we are. It is. It's not just the new people coming into it, and I feel bad for them, because they're having to come into it when even HR themselves are like, "Wow, we don't know how to use these systems." And we do hear those candid remarks, and it's not that HR is bad. It's not that recruiters are bad. There are some really bad, people in both that just don't have the experience, and I think that's all it comes down to. But when you look at it and just go, if I give you a resume of somebody that is ideal for this job and you can't see it because it didn't check your boxes from your systems, or you just look at it and go, oh, I didn't have the right keywords for me, there's an issue. And I don't think companies are addressing this yet. They want to address it, and I see that at the conferences that I go to, they want to figure it out, but they don't seem to take the right steps. They get They get distracted by the new shiny SaaS product. Again, that is the issue. And with regards to the mass hiring we are seeing and the decline in hires, companies are having to shift so fast. And we saw this kind of after the pandemic, where they just mass hired and then they mass laid off because they didn't need them actually, or they weren't actually the right people. And I think that became the Wild West of where we are right now. That was the first step of what is to come and what is here, because nothing is changing. And my fear is that with everything going on, economically, with companies, tariffs, you name it, I don't care what you throw in there. When we have this many layoffs and unemployment looks like it does, and it looks like it's just the claims are going to continue to increase, what is this going to look like if this is not getting fixed? What is this going to look like for the average job seeker, the average American, even globally? This isn't just a US issue. This is a global issue. We are seeing this everywhere. What is this going to do to the economy and to the regular, average, hardworking American?
Well, that brings up the H-1B thing that has become an issue. And I won't throw my age into this. I'm going to sit there and stick with the H-1B subject first, because we did promote and pass an increase in H-1B visas under Trump already. And I think for the high tech worker who's used to making $160,000 to $180,000 a year living in California, and then suddenly finding their position replaced by someone who's making 50, 60, 70, are we now evolving into the price discovery phase for quote unquote high tech? And what's happening out in California is reflective of a demand reduction as people use AI plus cheaper labor to achieve the same goals.
We're definitely seeing a price change. Game's over. There was a lot of cushy jobs out there, tech and otherwise, for the last several years, because companies needed people and they didn't know what to do. So they just threw money at it and people got used to it. And I think we also have to consider the fact that, when everybody, especially here, especially in America, everybody really fought that return to office concept. Oh no, I want to stay home. I want to still be making my 180,000 and I can work from home and I'm going to be great. The problem with that is that what most didn't realize is that, okay, that now opens up the job field to anybody in the world that can work. And you know what? In other countries, they're going to work for a cheaper salary. So, Americans shot themselves in the foot with that one. I'm not going to lie. You can't really say otherwise, but also companies are getting smarter. They're like, well, I don't have to pay this. And yes, now we do have AI processes, and a lot of companies do have really great AI processes, within their systems, especially finance. I mean, they've been using that for eons, but you have all of that going on, and then you just have general workers that are like, no, I'm turning down jobs. And I speak to some really, really top, executive recruiters, and one's like, people are turning down $300,000 jobs because they might find something better, or they don't want to relocate. This is not the time to get picky, y'all. Whether it's like $100,000 job or 180 or 300, this is not the time to be picky, because there's a lot going on and there are other people that will want to take your job. And yes, companies are really big on work in office. And, honestly, I am that side of things. For most jobs, yeah, it works. Yes, I know I'm the girl that has always, had my own companies and worked wherever I wanted to in the world. But, for a lot of corporate America, you do have to be in office, and it just works better. And so, I do agree with that. But what is this going to change? What is going to change over the years when AI really starts taking hold, as jobs change, because jobs are changing. It's just like the whole joke of, oh, yeah, everybody told you to be a coder. We have an issue now. So, what are jobs going to look like in the next 5 years? What is that going to do? Is it going to turn into more remote-esque style jobs, even for the companies that are currently return to office based? What is that going to do globally with our employment. And I'm worried that so many people just aren't considering that, and they're just going, oh no, I'm going to hold out for a better job. You see a lot of federal workers that have been laid off that are like, I'm going to hold off as well. And, they're like, something's going to give. Well, not necessarily, and hey, that's your severance package. You're just, spending and wasting. In the meantime, get a job, take it, whatever, keep moving forward. Because those 180,000, I feel are going to disappear in a pretty big way.
So this brings us to the next question. It's great. I think it's a fair assessment. Is this a deterioration in workers' attitude or an actual measurable deterioration in their capabilities? Because why in the world, if these software engineers couldn't recognize they could make the same salary going back and learning COBOL 6, which I learned COBOL for years, bailed, went and got into a different field. And now there's no one who really works with COBOL but us old farts, for lack of a better explanation. And they're desperate to have them come back in and reprogram our Minuteman III missiles and work with the government. It would seem to me, if you're a software engineer, you would swallow your pride, learn that skill, because COBOL isn't that hard, folks. Apply yourself, make a big mint on that, and diversify your skill set. It doesn't seem to be happening with that group in the 30 to 50 year age category, or is that just my impression?
No, you're right with that. It's that swallow your pride thing, and I don't see it. And you know what? You know who will? Workers in India and across the globe. These H-1Bs are coming in like, what do you want? And they do have the broad skills, and I don't know, for the life of me, I don't know why American workers are so hell-bent against diversifying, especially in tech, and it kind of just boggles your mind sometimes of like, why are we doing this? You've gone to school, you have student loans, pay them off, but you have to learn the other skills, you have to do the things, or just do the stuff that you don't necessarily want to do, but hey, it's a good paying job, get in there and do it. And I don't know. I don't know where this is going to take us. I'm sure tech companies can try to figure that out coming soon, but this is going to become an issue. And unfortunately, I think even tech workers in America are going to feel it. Not saying that they're all going to lose their jobs to overseas workers or anything like that. Not at all. But this is a case of Darwinism, isn't it?
Sounds like it to me. That brings me to the last question on the job side of things before a quick break. And this is something that hits close to home because I'm an old guy. I admit it. I'm in my 60s. Let's say I re-enter into the professional workforce. I put out my resume. They look, oh, he's an old guy. Could be a healthcare risk. We better look at our health insurance comparison. And that's a reality of being my age and applying for a position. I'd rather start my own company again. So if someone sits there and enters the workforce with all the experience and prerequisite knowledge needed for those companies, is there still a discrimination against hiring that older person to train the younger generation? I'm still hearing about it. I'm not seeing it because I'm not active, but it does seem like there's a lot of people between the ages of 58 to 70 re-entering the workforce, offering their skill set, willing to teach the younger generation, but corporations are willing to take the cheaper route, go overseas and gamble that they'll get the results they desire.
Yeah, does discrimination still happen? Yes. And honestly, it is due to the highly inexperienced recruiters. That's all I'm going to say on that. It is just that. But also there's a lot of candidates that are 50 plus, and even at 45. I'm going to tell you right now, I mean, over the years, I've helped over 25,000 people get their jobs. Whether I'm working with them on their career path, introducing them to recruiters, I'm writing their resumes, and we're building their brands, whatever it happens to be. And I primarily worked with management directors upward. So most of my clients, honestly, were 55 plus. Have they had an issue finding jobs? No, because it's about mindset. and how you go about the job search. If you sit there and go, oh my gosh, they're going to discriminate against me, you're going to have a bad time during the job search. It's that simple. And there are 45-year-olds that are like, I'm too old, they're never going to hire me. I'm like, okay, dude, I'm older than you. You're going to get a job. It's cool. You're fine. Here's, and I think what I want everybody to realize is that, yes, you'll be discriminated against if you push that concept out there. But if you go into the job search going, hell yeah, I'm like the best candidate and I know what they need, and you do your homework and you do your research and you don't apply on job boards and do all that crazy stuff, and you actually get into it and start focusing on what these companies want, and getting in and talking to HR and getting in and talking to the right recruiters and the right people, you're going to have a good time. When you're looking at like CEOs and executives of companies, guess what? They're over 50 for a lot of them, right? They're not sitting there going, oh my gosh, nobody's going to hire me as CEO because I'm over 50. Let's just put that into perspective. Put that into your job search and into your, your mindset with it all. You're going to get hired. Just stop playing that you're old. It doesn't matter. If you have the skills they need and make sure it's the exact skills they need, you're going to do great.
So this brings a question from Charles Gasparino's favorite account. If you're a mid-career professional from age 30 to 50 and you need to pivot to a new career, what career would you recommend to carry you to retirement? That's a legitimate question.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Oh gosh, what would I say? If I guess it just really depends on where you kind of came from. What I would feel is fairly secure right now, and I know a lot of people are probably going to disagree with me on this one, but anything within finance, anything within wealth. Everybody wants money, right? And that's why I said, you can't really go from tech into that unless you're fintech or something like that. It's difficult. There's more consultants in the world than the world needs. It's not something I would definitely recommend. I know a lot of people at that age range, they try to go, oh, I'm just going to become a fractional. Yeah, that's just like the new word for being, freelance. Okay. It's not exciting. It's not cool. It's not, flashy. And if you like feast and famine, go for it. But finance is strong. Money's always going to be there, right? So whatever area you're in, figure out how to transition into how to help people make money, to support those that are making money. I think any area in that would be my recommendation. Usually I try to make it more really specific or adjacent to them. But also you have to think about it. And one of my favorite things, sorry, this is going off just a little bit, but one of my favorite things to ask people, and anybody that's looking for a job, you should ask yourself this: what is it that you really want to do on a daily basis? What are you really good at, but don't ever want to do again? When you think about that, it really takes you down some serious rabbit holes, and you start figuring out exactly what is going to make you happy, especially when you're moving in and you're going through a transition in your career. Even if it's within your industry, or you're just like, no, I'm done with my industry. Think about what you are really good at, and think about what it is that you never want to do again. Even if you're amazing at it, what are those things?
Crap, I was really good as a transportation and logistics consultant. Oh, well. All right, let me take a quick pause real quick. MacroEdge.net/ozone, MacroEdge.net/ozone. Get your 2-week free trial. Read information from the team at MacroEdge. We have a lot to offer there. Check it out. You might find out something new that you didn't know about, despite the finge quit crazy media that you're hearing, including some of the stupidest things that we are counteracting with facts, like the Bureau of Labor Statistics creative statistical analysis, which is revised weekly, daily, monthly, hourly, whatever. We try to present the facts as they are, help you make your investment decisions, help you make some life decisions. MacroEdge.net/ozone for your free 2-week trial. Speaking of the finance industry, and I just can't wait to throw this big, fat, juicy softball over Amanda's home plate. How do you think BNPL is going to turn out, Miss Amanda?
Can we say the word bomb on here?
You can say whatever you want. It's X spaces.
Fair. It's a disaster. It is an utter disaster. I mean, okay, yes, I've dealt with careers for the last 20 years, but like I said, I've advised a lot of companies. I've worked with a lot of companies over the last 20 years as a startup mentor with the VC space and things like that. And with dealing with the credit company that I deal with now, watching what goes on and seeing all of this, like I said, it's these layers. You add up these layers, and oh my gosh, this is a disaster in the making. And buy now, pay later. When I really dove into it, I know it's been around for a while, but I kind of stay in my lane for the most part until I hear about something, and then it just gets me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and then I rabbit hole. But when I really got into the buy now, pay later side of things last year and open banking, and what that is doing to the actual consumer, they have no clue what is coming. And the very fact that it's now all going to be, I guess not Afterpay yet, we'll just call it yet. All the other ones are being reported to credit. Like, even if you pay for your $150 Nikes on time every month while you make your payments, you're now, to lenders, they're now looking at you going, you want to buy a $40,000 car, but you finance Nikes? These are stacked issues on credit reports, even if they're paid off. I don't care how beautiful they look. And if you have no late payments, the optics are more disastrous than anybody can imagine. And I'm really starting to, I don't know a lot about it yet, but the whole Klarna thing, and I've kind of looked into that with what's going on now that they're bond back. I mean, oh my gosh, seriously, who's buying this stuff? I mean, it's genius. Okay, from a capitalist point of view, I get it. Money, the finance thing I was talking about. But, this whole concept of what's going on, and what I'm really trying to focus in right now, and this morning, what I was kind of like diving into, how long are these bonds for? Because that's going to tell us when everything is going to blow up. Right. What I've found so far is that they're anywhere from 18 months to 3 to 5 years. And I haven't gotten a definite. If any of the listeners here have a definite, or maybe you do, I would love to know, because this is something I'm just kind of diving in because, yeah, there's issues. And again, it's genius, and the marketing is genius. I'm not going to lie. The marketing for buy now, pay later and open banking, hearing it from the executives themselves. I just spoke to a Chime executive like a couple weeks ago, hearing him talk about it with such passion, and I'll put that in quotes. It's just like, what? For anybody that actually knows what's going on, it makes your eyes just glaze over.
Well, I bring that up because, and this is where you, as the jobs chick, and that's at the jobs chick, if you're not following her on X/Twitter, highly recommend it, can come in and coach some people. A lot of our listeners are professionals, but we also get some other listeners, including on the rebound, who listen to the show later. They don't seem to understand, and this is something I would look at as an employer from a professional point of view. Your credit rating is also part of your qualification for a job. And if you use BNPL and default on that and reduce your credit viability along with the student loans, which a lot of them have, does not that degraded credit report impact your desirability to be hired?
Yeah, and it used to just kind of be in that finance, professional sector, legal, government, that kind of stuff. Now it is starting to become more widely looked at, and it's still not used by every employer. So I don't want everybody to freak out and go, oh my gosh, I'm not getting employed because I'm, sub 650. You will, but they are going to take a look at it, especially higher level roles, or public facing roles. They really want to see that. But yeah, they are going to look at certain areas, and that is an issue. And I don't think a lot of people realize what that is going to do. And it's not going to stop you necessarily from getting hired. But I have actually spoken to several people, I'd say probably less than a dozen, but that's a good enough amount over the last 2 years, that did not get the job because of their credit and their finances. And, and they try to figure out whatever they can do, whether it's credit repair and doing their wiping and these sweeps off their credit, or, can I add trade lines, or what do I do? Can I just, not show them that? I'm like, yeah, it doesn't work like that. But it happens. Nobody wants to lose a potential job offer because of this. So don't let it happen to you. Don't buy that burrito. Don't buy those Nikes you can't afford. Don't buy those festival tickets you can't afford. That's what you have to think about when you're looking at all of this. And from a business point of view, it makes total sense. And I know people think that's really harsh, but I've run businesses, I've had employees, and I didn't do credit checks back then, but I understand why a lot of companies do, especially in this day and age. Insurance companies, car insurance checks your credit. And a lot of people, I think, don't realize that. This is the same thing as like buying a phone. They're going to check your credit. Can you pay this? Insurance will look at it and go, are you stressed because your credit score's down and you have all these late payments? Maybe you have collections. You're stressed. Maybe you're not focused driving. Hey, guess what? Your insurance premium is higher. And people don't realize that. And it's whatever. Okay, you're going to pay it because we all have to have insurance, right? Oh my gosh. And don't ever not let your insurance renew in Nevada by accident. But there's things people don't realize of what goes on with credit and with companies and how employers look at it all. And yeah, from an employer's perspective, if you're likely to be extremely stressed, you might not be a good hire to work in a with a high functioning team that is going to be stressed, and also, you have to also take into consideration, where was I going with this? You have to take into consideration all of the concepts around the credit, and what companies are actually doing right now is financial wellness programs. And that's actually what I was talking to the Chime executive on. And, Jason kind of walked me through this, and this is their new workplace thing. And his concept was, what they promote. And I've said this here on X as well. A third of people live paycheck to paycheck, a third. And I would agree that's probably pretty accurate. Another third are making it paycheck to paycheck, but just barely, right? So you got 2/3 of working Americans that aren't doing great, right? So companies do have this stress of an employee, and they're having to look at that. So they're building in all these financial wellness programs. Call it for whatever you want. Some of them do open banking, and it just sounds great. We're going to make sure your finances are good, and we're going to make sure you have what you need, and we're going to offer these programs, and they have these capital growth and capital management and capital expansion programs depending on where you are from the paycheck to paycheck concept with Chime, for instance. And this is free to employers, by the way, which kind of actually blew my mind. They are making money from the consumer. So they're making money from people that can't pay their bills or are living paycheck to paycheck. And their whole concept is that, we're going to make sure you have a credit extension if you need it. If you need to get your money, instead of it being on Friday, payroll already put it out there. It's available for you Wednesday. You can draw on it, high payday loans, right? There's all these things that are out there. And while it might help a lot of people, it is really worrying to me. And you bring it back into the consumer debt side of things, the credit side of things. And yes, some are going to see an improvement in their life if they are financially educated. And there are education programs. Don't get me wrong. Chime has education programs, and all the other companies that do this have education programs. Who reads that stuff? Probably not a lot of people. I know this from dealing with the credit company that I advise. They want to get better, but they don't do it. And there's going to be an interesting turn over the next couple of years as financial wellness becomes such a big deal, as part of like it's not really a benefits package, but it is part of, what you get. And it'll be interesting to see how people are managing salary with that, and managing credit, and how that translates to, can you find a job? Is it going to make them more like, hey, I can borrow money, or I can just get money ahead of time, and that allows me to pay off my buy now, pay later bill. Is that going to be the problem? Because then when do they get the money afterwards? Is it going to cause a problem, or is it going to help them? I don't know. Time's going to tell on that one, but I'm not feeling confident overall with it. But like I said, we'll see.
Well, I will say this: you have brought to our attention another issue. So we're going to steer back into something else. I will say this, folks, from talking to friends who are in the industry, if your credit report is crappy or questionable and you're trying to get into cybersecurity right now, good luck. The number of violations, hacks, break-ins, and backdoors created by poor cybersecurity or poor corporate cybersecurity due to vulnerabilities with individuals, like what has happened overseas, where a certain major company had all of their outsourced individuals say, yeah, I'll sell the data for this price. It's a danger. And they're going to view you as an American very suspect if anything happens. So have your credit report ready to go. Have it cleaned up before you apply for a high security job. Rotating around to the next subject, because I got to give Amanda a little time to rant about this. And I'm sure she has the same issue we have. We discussed this with everyone from Anna Wong to Deborah D. Martino Booth. Amanda, your turn. Data integrity regarding employment reporting by the states and the federal government. Is this not distorting reality because of a failure to measure properly the contractor economy, which has developed in the last decade?
I try not to look at it. I take it with a grain of salt. Oh my gosh, it is. I mean, it's what, 54% revised now? I mean, okay, these numbers aren't real, okay? They might be general and it works, but oh my gosh, what is going on with it all? I don't know. You know, everybody wants to blame various administrations. It's still going on. It's always been like this. It's whatever. You know, at the end of the day, we can look at those numbers and go, oh my gosh, it's good. Oh my gosh, it's bad. Whatever it happens to be. And sometimes it doesn't even tie up. It doesn't even make sense, right? You know, one number doesn't match another one, let alone looking at it from an industry standpoint. But you have to look at what's going on, especially with long-term unemployment, which is increasing. And, you know, so with that regard, you know, will I look at those numbers and go, yeah, it's increasing? Yeah. From a general trends point, I'll agree. You know, with me, I mean, I focus heavily on oil, aerospace, fintech, and things like that. So, you know, but I do look at other companies, especially when something's interesting going on, like Microsoft laying off 6,000 people and, you know, and Meta doing their thing of not layoffs. I'm going to look at all of those things. But when you look at a broad sense from a workforce intelligence point of view on, you know, what companies are actually hiring, you know, yeah, sure, they have a lot of job listings out there. And, you know, and so the reports look amazing. Oh, look at all these jobs available. Well, that's intent to hire. That doesn't mean they're hiring. And that's what I think a lot of people don't realize. And the average reader reading those headlines going, oh, there's been so many jobs added to the economy. That's so great. Well, yes, but not yet. And, you know, and how many did they just lay off? So we look at all of those things. The McDonald's thing is a prime example. Oh, they're hiring 375,000 people. Well, that's pretty close to their average, and it's actually just under for summertime. So yes, they're trying to expand and make, I don't remember how many hundreds and hundreds of more stores over the next couple of years. But, you know, and this is the same thing with what Facebook did many months ago, where they were just like, oh, we're going to hire so many people, but they're not necessarily the new ones. It's the ones that they already had out there. People don't realize that. They just see, oh, new layoffs or new jobless claims or, you know, oh, jobs added, and they don't know what to do. People read headlines and they don't look into it. And you know, I get it. They're not in this. They're not nerdy like we are, right? That are all listening to this. But, you know, we do have to take all of those numbers with a grain of sand and kind of compare it to what we can actually see. And when you're looking at sentiment and things like that, yes, that works. But, you know, BLS and different things like that, that's lagging indicators. That isn't looking forward. And that's my focus, you know, with everything that I do, is looking forward on everything. Yes, look at it, see what has gone on historically, and you can look at that and you can run it through models and simulations, but we really, really have to focus on what companies are actually doing. And what are their activists making them do? And what are their shareholders making them do? Because at the end of the day, that is what's going on. So yeah, state, government, whatever data, take it with a grain of salt. I do. I'll post about it, but it's not my favorite thing in the world.
110% agree, and that's why we're sitting here trying to develop new data points for everybody at MacroEdge. And folks, that's macroedge.net/ozone. Get your 2-week free trial. Cheap, shameless plug. No, it really wasn't. So, Amanda, I'm going to go to the next point, and this is really important because I look at JOLTS, and everyone highlights JOLTS every time that stupid report comes out. And I said for over a decade, it is the most corrupted, poorly methodology speaking data point released by the government. Job openings and layoffs, etc. The problem is layoffs are announced but not necessarily followed through. Job openings are job openings that are posted in want ads and job recruiting services like Indeed and ZipRecruiter, so on and so on. There's so many, a monster, you name it, whatever. However, the reality is no different than it was 30 years ago when it was in the newspaper. And it would appear that a lot of this is just put out for the public to show that, hey, look at all the jobs are available. But in the end, it's data collection for those services versus actual job openings. And does that not cause a lot of discouragement within the job seeking community, especially those industries that are hardest hit?
I think it can, again, like what you said, it's a narrative that's driven and it has been used for forever. And right now, the average job seeker is watching the news more because it's there. You open your phone and you just get bombarded with it, right? So we see it all. So they're a lot more aware of it. 40 years ago, 50 years ago, people were not like, hey, I wonder how many jobs are available. The average job seeker was not looking at that. Now, yes, it is. For me, I'm more of the point, and as you know, everything I write, I'm gonna say it, and everybody calls me doom and gloom, and that's cool. I'm fine. I'm good with that title, whatever. But at the end of the day, it's what's happening. So you can argue with my facts, or you can, or not. I don't care. But does it affect industries? Does it affect people? Yes. I just wish people would stop listening to just base headlines. And, I think it really is that simple. Stop listening to base headlines and actually look at what's going on. And if you are a job seeker, you sure as hell better be knowing what's going on in your industry and in your company. And if you're looking at it from a point from jolts, and going, oh, these industries and here's where they're hiring and the percentage changes and all that kind of stuff, actually look into it more. And it'll be interesting to see what you guys come up with that, with the way of like looking at all of that, because people need that. There's a lot of data companies out there that just provide baseline, or they just, like you said, the Indeeds, the LinkedIn, oh, look, you can have this information, this is who's hiring. Well, that's cool, but the average person doesn't know how to read that. And I think that is what's missing. And that'll be what makes a difference for the job seekers moving forward in the next couple of years, as it's really difficult. And we do have that. And people are sad because there's not jobs, or they've been out of a job for so long, and because it's hard and they don't know what to do. And there's no manual for this stuff, So, let the government data be it there, but look at everything else and trust your gut as well.
Well, I always like to end the show and give my guest a lot of leeway to answer a big question. And this is directly related to the services you provide, the information you provide on FinTwit and through your Substack. Please promote the hell out of that. So here we go. A job seeker now in this environment, which appears to be a 1 to 2 year stagflationary environment. For you younger people, that was the 1970s. I entered the job force in 81 while I was in college. It was a nightmare. So folks, listen to what Amanda has to say, because the economy and the job market are shifting under your feet as we speak, sit, whatever. So what advice do you have about where we're at and the evolution? Personally speaking, if you're in robotics, you're going to print your own paycheck. If you're in engineering, you have the capacity to print your own paycheck. But if you're in the traditional stagnant industries that have not evolved inside the United States to become cost effective and productive from the point of view of providing products that Americans want at an affordable price, you're a dinosaur on your way to extinction. Let our listeners know about your website, about your Substack, and how they can frame the future if they need to go out and seek a new profession.
Yeah, so on X, follow me at the Job Chick. My Substack I can drop on there. It's the Insider's Edge with the Job Chick, and you can go to thejobchick.com. Really easy. I'm the only one with pink hair doing this, so you can find me pretty easy. But with my advice to anybody looking, and everything is going to keep changing. Don't expect it to go back to what it was. And that is something that I hear all the time. Oh, it's going to get better. No. It's different now. And this is never going to get better. And, it's just the new normal. And everybody's waiting for it to go back to 2019 pre that. And I'm like, well, it wasn't actually great then either. So, whatever. There are, like you said, robotics. Yes. Physical AI and stuff like that. Yes, absolutely. Man, can you print a paycheck? There's a lot of areas and people have to be smart enough. This is the time to pivot and learn to go into a different field. So many industries are going to be closing, shedding, not closing like in a big way, but they're laying off, whether it's various levels of retail. We're seeing that pretty heavily right now. There's some areas of hospitality they're struggling that are going down, and that is your average everyday American consumer, and employee in those jobs. And we have to think outside the box. We all have a lot of skills. Even if you did not go to college, we all have a lot of skills. And you have to get smart. Nobody's coming to save you. There's not going to be a bailout. And I know, and there's the conversation about like UBI and things like that. And maybe someday, I'm not seeing it tomorrow. But we have to be smart enough to save our own careers, to get ahead in our own careers. And there are jobs out there. Yes, it is a hard job market out there right now. There are so many jobs available, jobs you can make. I work with clients right now that do actually go to companies and go, hey, I can do this for you guys. I know this is something you guys are focusing on. They don't have a job for that, but they make a job for them. It can happen. Nobody's coming to save you. Figure it out. Stop applying on Indeed and LinkedIn. I'm sorry, but unless you just want to go through like heartbreak and ghosting and all that disaster that comes along with that side of things, go reach out to the companies themselves. Go find the recruiters. The names are on there. You can find them. It's not hard. Make those connections. Do that networking and get ahead in what you do. And when you are looking for a job, focus on that workforce intelligence. Check out my X, check out my Substack. We can do a special deep dive if that's something that you want to do. And I do work with a lot of like directors on that, so that they can go, okay, I want to apply to these different companies. Are they good? Because there's a lot of things happening. And what if something fractures? What if they've laid off all their staff? Well, I don't want to become a manager or a director if they've just laid off a bunch of staff. I mean, do you know what that's going to look like as you start your new job? It's not going to be fun. So unless that like makes you really happy, you need to know what's going on with these companies. So look behind the scenes at everything, not just headlines, and even not just, generic industry headlines. You've got to look around. And for HR and for companies who I love dearly working with, because I watch them just, their eyes are glazed over when I start with them. And then I see them they see the light and they go, oh, that's how we can get better candidates. They are trying to figure that out. So the more companies I can work with, the more maybe this can like start making a little bit of a dent in things as well. Because at the end of the day, companies don't even know what's going on internally in a lot of the cases as well, which is just wild, but it is what it is. But yeah, there's jobs. Go do what you need to do and pivot. At the end of the day, for the most part, a lot of the jobs that we have today are not going to be there in the next 5 years. It's just going to be different. It's not that they're all going to be gone. I know everybody's worried about AI taking your job, and yes, there are a lot of things with AI taking jobs. It's just going to be different on what's available. So, get your thinking cap on and think about what you're good at and go after that.
Amanda, thank you so much for sharing your insight with our listeners.
Thank you.
That's Amanda Goodall at the Job Chick on X. Do not miss following her insights. She has grasped onto something that people need to pay attention to. You are your own salesman or saleswoman. There, that did my politically correct thing. The reality is that we're going to have to sit there and accept that there's a change coming. And if you're not a fan of Charles Hugh Smith, I don't think he'll mind me reading the last sentence of his most recent posting. This makes the impossible, a reshuffling of the social order on a grand scale, not just possible, but inevitable. Nobody saw it coming, etc. Yes, sure, whatever. A lot of us have seen this coming. We're about to see a shift in the global macro order. If you're not prepared for that, be it domestically in the job market or personally financially, you had best get your house in order. The clock is ticking and time is running out. MacroEdge.net/ozone. Go to MacroEdge.net/ozone for your 2-week free trial. We'll let you know if X is up. Thank God it made it through this entire hour for our wonderful guest, who our special guest will be, and we will return